My name is Donna, also known as Donna Janelle, CEO and founder of Parenting with a Purpose. Our strive here at the podcast is to reach every home, whether it's single moms, married, single dads, whatever it is, foster parents, whatever, just bringing the ownership and responsibility and nobility back into parenting. Get comfortable with uncomfortable conversations. All parents need some help and guidance, and I'm just here to be a guide. Hey everybody, welcome back to Parenting with Purpose. I am your host, Donna Janelle, where I strive to bring back the responsibility, nobility, and beauty back into parenting. As you know, parents are the bows and our children are arrows, and they will land wherever we send them. May not be today, may not be tomorrow, but best assured they will land. Matter of fact, it won't even be next year, I don't even know when it's going to be. I can't even tell you when it's going to be. But I know that if we dress our children and give them the proper tools, that they will eventually land where they need to be, right? So as parents, you know, we got to put in the work. It's hard. It's a hard not like out here for parenting. I keep telling y'all every week, parenting is challenging. I'm not going to say parenting is hard anymore. I'm changing that. Parenting is challenging. Challenging, okay? As you know, I got a story. My one kid that tests my inner gangster. You know, we got to talk. You know, I have 4 kids, but it's the one that tests my inner gangster that we always talk about on the show, right? So let me tell you the newest thing. It's going to be brief before we get into tonight's session, man. So she's about to be 16, and y'all know she tests me. I think she wake up in the morning and said, matter of fact, I think she goes to sleep at night, and while she sleep, she's dreaming about how she can best figure me out or try to, like, irritate me or something. I don't know what it is. I feel like this is her aim. So Sunday, I was getting ready for church. I said, I'm about to take a shower. She says, I'm about to take a shower. I say, well, I'm about to take a shower. And she says, I'm about to take a shower. And in my mind, I'm like, is she playing games with me? Like, I'm laughing in my head. Like, I know she can't be serious. Telling me, basically, is she telling me not to take a shower? Like, I got to wait for her? Or what is she doing? So then I just bust out laughing, y'all, because I was like, I'm not doing this with her today. Well, I'm not doing. So then she proceeds to say, well, what time will you be done with the shower? Yo, I just bust out laughing. I said, this is a test. This is a test. This is a test. Because ain't no way a 16-year-old is about to challenge me about a shower, the water I pay for, the house I pay for, the soap I pay for, and I'm going to have to wait for her. That's crazy, right? This is why I tell you, I think that she purposely tried to figure something out to say, let me see how I can get her off her game. But she ain't going to get me because I laughed at her. I bust out laughing. And then my son turns around and looks at me like, I think he was just shocked that she said that, or he was trying to figure out what I was going to do. Anyway, that's one of the things. She did a lot of things this week, but that was the thing, was the craziest, because I just laughed at her. So, you know, parenting is challenging, and they will test your inner gangster. My kids test my inner gangster all the time, but guess what? I'm going to win. I'm going to win over them. I don't know if it's them, if it's me, if it's them. They trying to figure me out. After all these years, I'm trying to figure them out there. I don't know where the disconnect is, but let me tell you what's going to connect. Me laughing at you because I'm not fitting to argue with no kids, okay? Because they not winning. I'm going to win. So, parents, stay your ground. Stand strong. Don't let them beat you. Don't let your kids take no shower before you if you wanted to take your shower. That's the moral of that story, okay? That's the moral of that story. Don't listen. Just don't. Now, when they little, you give them the shower, the baths, and everything like that, then you go get your stuff. Listen, at this age of the game, they 18, 16, y'all gonna wait, okay? Period. I don't like taking a shower after my kids anyway. The bathroom be foggy, the floor be wet, stuff be all over the place. I don't want none of that, so you gonna wait. So moral of the story, don't let your kids take a shower before you. Anyway, I'm back. Really back in, Donna. Okay. So tonight, you know, is a conversation that we're having. It's very near and dear to me, about holistic living, about health, nutrition, about wellness, about so many things, body, mind, and soul. Okay, so many things that that we don't talk about that we need to talk about, particularly in our community, because when we look at the stats that our people are dying at rapid numbers for a lot of health reasons, right? So tonight my guest is Stacey Woodson. She is a registered dietitian, a nutritionist, and she is here to talk about what we don't talk about. Basically, here at Parenting with a Purpose, we have engaging conversations, and we talk about what people don't want to talk about, because I believe here that the more information we share, the more we help each other out, the better outcomes we have in our community. So welcome to the show, Stacey.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for coming. This is a topic that's very near and dear to me, and throughout the show I'll share a couple reasons why it's near and dear to me. But just tell us we already know who you are, but tell us a little bit about yourself, and then we'll get into some nutrition and wellness and all those things.
Sure. So as you mentioned, my name is Stacey. I am a mom of 3. I have a 12-year-old, a 10-year-old, and an 8-year-old to be next week. I'm a homeschool mom. I'm a dietitian and nutritionist by trade. I'm also an entrepreneur and children's book author.
Yes.
I fell into the career of nutrition almost 20 years ago. At this point, I wanted to be a physician.
Okay.
I was actually interviewing for medical school. And then one day I read an article about nutrition, specifically about calories. And so as somebody that's always been interested in health, I cared about what I ate, but I never really thought about how much. Mm-hmm. And so in this article, one of the things that it mentioned was that 3,500 calories was equivalent to 1 pound. Oh. And so I started paying attention to how much I was eating.
Right.
That's coupled with, I had just graduated from undergrad and kind of taking that gap year and working at the University of Pennsylvania. So I was living in West Philly, and the parking was just terrible. So I was walking to work. So more physical activity and paying attention to my portions.
Okay.
And I dropped a significant amount of weight. I don't actually know how much it was because that was never my intent. But if I had to guess, it was probably around 20 pounds.
Right. Okay.
Because people would come up to me like, "Oh my gosh, what are you doing?" And I was just like, just
living.
Yeah, just living. And that's when it really clicked to me that this is so important. And a lot of the things that I wanted to do as a physician, I could do in this world.
Okay.
Which is, help people improve their health and prevent chronic disease. And so that's the way I went.
Oh, wow. That's interesting. Wow, so you wanted to be a physician. Mm-hmm. Wow. What kind of, was it like peds or like adults, or like what were you thinking?
I mean, I feel like when you go into medicine, you really don't know, but I was looking at dermatology.
Okay.
I've always had an interest in skin, and skin, most people don't realize, is the largest organ of your body.
Right. Wow. So now you're on this food, but you don't just talk about food though. Like you are so holistic, like and very intentional of how you treat your body and things like that. Yeah. So one of the things that, when I met you at an event and just heard you speak, and one of the things I kept hearing, and it was more so about our community, the Black community, and having our pre-conference call, we were talking about a lot of things that we're told that we can't do as African Americans, that this is the reason why you're this way, or this is the reason why you're that way. And there's so much about taking away so much from you, where you literally, it's like a restrictive diet, and you really can't even do that, and then you fall into the traps of doing other things, and then it's just messing up even more.
Right.
So I want to talk about particularly for our African American community. I was trying to think about how I wanted to spin this thing, but we'll just start here. We like fried chicken, right? We like fried chicken. We like collard greens. We like cornbread. We like all those things. And for so long, that's how most of us have grown up. And then when we get into our adulthood, and we start to learn now that, or we're told that, stop eating all that. Actually, just stop eating all that. It's not even we know that food consumption is based on moderation too. But a lot of times, I know for me, being diabetic, my grandfather was a diabetic. My dad's a diabetic. My grandfather actually died. He had his leg amputated, and then there was some other throughout the years, because he still was eating kind of what he wanted to eat, But I even see now, even with my dad, my dad is not as bad as my grandfather was, but there are some things that goes on with him being diabetic and then I was a diabetic. So it's just like, it's these generational things. It's like, how do we stop it from hitting our generation after generation, but kind of in a healthy way?
Right. So the first thing that's coming to mind as you're talking is we really have to look at the context of our society, right? And so our society is very different than it was for them.
Right.
And so I often hear people talk about, like my great grandfather, they used to eat, this and that and that, and they lived to be so long. Well, guess what? They didn't have the exposure to pollutants that we have. They didn't have the sedentary lifestyle. So you really have to look at the context of when we're living, right? And so the thing that I'm saying now is I feel like the generation before us, they were trying to survive. We had a conversation about, that clean plate club. Like you eat everything that's on this plate. And why? Probably because they were worried about us going hungry. Right? But now we don't need to necessarily worry about, some of us are still worrying about surviving, but a lot of us are worrying about thriving. So we're having different conversations than we were having before. And so when we have these different conversations, we have to realize that it's not just about our physical health, but it's also about our mental health.
Right.
Right? So if you were told, I always use this example because I happen to love sweet potato pie. Like if somebody told me I could never have sweet potato pie again, I think I would die inside a little bit, right? Because I love it. It brings me joy. So it boosts my mental health, right? And to think that you could never have something that you enjoy, that's really problematic. And I feel like the way that people present nutrition specifically in this society is very, it's very, I can't think of the word that I want to say, but it's not looking at the big picture. It's just looking at this thing individually and how this thing interacts. And they don't think about how all these other things tie in when we talk about food.
Yo, you just made a good point about like, if somebody told me I couldn't have sweet potato pie, like I'm gonna be sad. Like,
right? And is your mental health more important than your physical health?
Right.
And so if that's the case, if you're gonna be, distressed and all these other things, you have physiological responses from your mental health. So eat the pie. Don't eat it every day, but eat the pie.
Yo, I never even put those two together. Because, we always hear, like, we're emotional eaters, right? We always hear that, a lot of us, like, we eat when we're happy. We eat when we're sad. We just eat, right? But I never really thought about, until you just said, like, how that really does tie into our mental, though. If you tell somebody they can't have something that they enjoy, and it's not like that thing is detrimental to their health. It's like, I mean, you tell me to do something, don't do something that's really bad for me. Okay, I get it. But understanding that even just moderation, like not, like you said, not every day, not even every other day, maybe like once or twice a month or whatever, because it brings you joy, it brings you peace.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so one of the things that I always say, these foods that you were talking about, you really think about how important they are. So I have this thing, especially around the holidays, a saying that I always tell to my clients, love it or leave it. So oftentimes, there's so much I want to unpack. But oftentimes when we end up in a situation where there's a bunch of food, we feel like we're not allowed to have it and it's not going to come around again. So then we feel like we have to eat it all, right? Because it's present. I don't know when I'm going to have the opportunity to have it. I'm already not doing the right thing. I might as well just eat it all now. So it's the scarcity mindset, right? But if you give yourself and you allow yourself the space to have it, and you give yourself ground rules around it. You know what? I'm going to eat a piece of sweet potato pie once a month. And you now have permission. You don't feel guilt. You don't feel shame. And you didn't overdo it because you've already set those boundaries for yourself.
Right. You said something interesting, like the scarcity mindset. Like, I'm trying to figure out, I guess it's just something that's just engraved in us just from, years of slavery, even though we ourselves wasn't directly impacted, but technically we were impacted by slavery. So like, even when you think about the holidays, like I feel like the challenge has always been like, who's going to have the most plates, or who has the most, like who's going to eat all the food. Like, it's like, you can see, like, it's almost like it's a competition. I feel like, oh, you go off around 3, you go around 4, but it's like not even, and those rounds are actually filled with food, like filled to the top, as if the food was going to go somewhere. Or, I remember just growing up watching people, all right, you eat the first, like we eat 3:00, right? You know, on a Sunday or holidays, right? You eat 3:00 because at 5:00 you need to eat again, or at 7:00. Like I seen it, and I just was wondering, like, why do we got to keep eating again, though?
And we don't. Like, that's the reality. It's something that has become our norm, and this is where the conversation is. You know, before we were surviving, before maybe holidays were the only time we had the capability to do something like this. You know, we saved to be able to have that Christmas dinner or that Thanksgiving dinner.
Right.
And it wasn't just something you could just do on a random Tuesday.
Right. Okay.
And so now you really got to pack it all in because you don't know when this is coming again except for the next holiday season. So now we want to really think about shifting that mentality. Like, I could really have this whenever I want. I need to set some guidelines for myself, specifically if it's a food that I struggle with.
Right.
You know,
Okay.
if it's not a food that you struggle with and you're just like, oh, I could have that anytime, that's different. But a lot of us have our triggers.
Right.
Right? Like for me, I really like sweets. And I know that sometimes I do too much with sweets. So I have a rule that I don't make a lot of sweets in my house, or I don't keep a lot of sweets in my house.
Right.
So when I'm out and I see something, I can have it. And I don't need to feel bad about it.
That's good. It's that feeling bad part, right?
Yes, it's that shame, right? That shame and that guilt because you're doing something wrong, which goes back to our mental health piece.
Right.
And so people always want to say, not just in the Black community, but in communities of color, that, you know, our foods aren't as nutritious, which is a lie, right? Most indigenous communities have extremely nourishing foods.
Right.
Like when you really think about that, and I'll just talk about, you know, the soul food that came from slavery.
Right.
When you think about it, it's not all the foods that we think about today, right? They weren't frying chicken. You have to think about the time. Remember the context of the environment.
Right.
They didn't have time to do all that. They didn't have those resources. So when I really think about soul food and I think about those really nutrient dense foods, I think about sweet potatoes. I think about black eyed peas. I think about greens. I think about all these plant-based foods, right? That often get vilified, and they didn't understand. When I say this would be like the medical community. They really didn't understand the synergy or the magic that was happening with soul food. Like some of those ingredients are put in there to pull out as many nutrients as possible. So you really think about this cuisine is a cuisine of maximum nutrition with minimal resource. In February, I was doing like workshops called Soul Food Superstars.
Right.
And really some of these things that we add in, like we don't know why some people put a little pinch of sugar in the greens. Well, guess what? It increases the iron absorption. Some people don't know why you're doing these, why there's a little bit of meat in there. It helps with the plant protein. It helps the absorption of the plant protein. Like there's reasons why these things happen, but you don't hear about that in the literature because the things that are studied, they're not about us, right? So, you know, we have all these articles about kale and how great it is, and I'm not knocking kale. Kale is amazing, right? But when you don't hear that same positive reinforcement with collards, you assume they're inferior, when indeed they're not inferior.
Wait, flag on the play, Stacey. Hold up. You just done hit me with a lot of stuff. Yo, wait a minute. We gotta back up a little bit. I'm almost speechless. So let's go back to putting a little sugar and stuff. Wait, what did you got to go back to what you just said about how things were added in so we can get the maximum nutritional benefit with the least amount of resources.
Right. Yes. So, I mean, if you look at traditional soul food recipes, and once again, I'm not talking about things like mac and cheese. I'm not talking about fried chicken. Those would be what I like to think of as special occasion foods.
Right.
Right.
Okay.
But these plant foods that they would have access to, they have ingredients. So when you think of all the spices that we use, you know,
Right.
and this is, once again, this is not just with the Black community. This is with any cultural community. You use a ton of spices.
Right.
What is one of the things that spices do? It helps with digestion. It helps with, when you think of things like pepper and onion and garlic, all of those things also support our immune system.
Right.
So they're in these recipes purposefully.
Right.
And so then you see people be like, oh, you know, take this out, and this isn't so great for you. They don't understand why they were there traditionally.
Whoa. Wow. So there was a purpose behind it. We just didn't understand the purpose.
We didn't understand the purpose, no.
Wow, that y'all hear that, people? That Wow, because one of the things that I hear a lot of older folks say is that, oh, we can't have nothing. Y'all told us to eat vegetables and stuff, and now we eat vegetables. Y'all don't like how we eating them. So, so what is the point? You're gonna die from something.
and I get that. Like, if I don't know what to do, I'm just gonna do what I want to do.
Yeah.
If everything is wrong, I'm just gonna live my best life, right?
Right.
And so that's where that piece is. You're gonna determine what you can do, right? Mm-hmm. And then you're going to work with that. Because there's a lot of things, when we think of our lives, we think of the things that we could do to improve them. There's a lot of things that we could do, but some things are going to be a lot harder for us to achieve than others.
Right.
And so you do the ones that actually you think you can do and not bring you a lot of pain or anguish. Right. Once you realize how beneficial those things are and you see the change, maybe you're losing weight, maybe you feel more hydrated, maybe you're having better bowel movements, maybe you're sleeping better, whatever it is, then you have some buy-in. Like, oh man, these changes really matter, they work. But just starting off the top with something that you don't enjoy, you're not going to stick with it.
Right. Wow. This is a lot. Oh, this is a lot. Because even, I watch what I eat and things like that, but I just never looked at it that way. I think a lot of times most of our issue is that we don't look at traditionally why these things are happening or why, we're ignorant, lack of knowledge. We based on what other people have told us about, and most of the time it's the people who don't look like us are telling us stuff about ourselves. And not because their lack of understanding or knowledge, and then we take that on and continue to carry that and think that we are being burdensome to ourselves by what we eat.
Right. And not to say we can't make better choices. So I won't say that there isn't a piece about, just being more mindful about the decisions that we're making around food. My piece is that we're often led to believe that our foods are solely the problem for the way we see, statistically, how people in certain communities, their health outcomes. That's not the case. There are so many other determinants of health, whether it's the neighborhood that you're living in and the exposure to, pollution, whether it's the lack of access to doctors, or even if you go to the doctors, them not taking your complaints or things seriously. Right. There's there's just layers upon layers. But people want to point the finger at you and like you have high blood pressure because you eat all this salty food, or you have this because of this, when it's not just that one thing.
Wow. So talk about how, because we talked about a little bit how the mental food, like what we eat, and how does that affect our mind, like our mental status? Like, how do you correlate those two together? Like, because I feel like they can't really be separated because our bodies is based on chemicals.
Right. And so there's so many different directions that I could take this with. The first thing that you said, when you first said it, it made me think of gut health immediately. Mm-hmm. So, our immune system and so much of our mood is related to our gut. Right. If we're not feeding our gut appropriately, we're going to not have the optimal mindset, right? Mm-hmm. And so if we are being a little bit more conscientious about the choices that we're making to support our mood, we're going to feel better. And specifically, one of the things so gut health is going to be something that we hear more and more about. It's going to become the norm conversation when it comes to nutrition. And one of the things that we're seeing is that we need to diversify our gut microbes.
Okay.
And we do that. The easiest way to do that is to diversify the amount of different plants that we eat, the unique plants that we eat. Mm-hmm. And so right now the research is saying that you want to shoot for a minimum of 30 different plants per week. And most people are just like, what? Whoa, that sounds insane. Yeah. But one thing that I will say about it, it's not as hard as you think, and I'll give you some examples, but often we see people even people that eat well, they get in a very regimented way of eating, right? And so like, oh, I have this, and I have this vegetable, and I have this vegetable. And so they're always eating the same thing, and they're not getting that variety in. Well, once again, if you're not getting in that variety, you're not exposing your gut to as many microbes as possible.
Right, okay.
And that's really the key with mental health as well. And so going back to this 30, this is going to include all different types of plants and other things. So, you're going to get microbes from all types of things. So not just plants. And you think about if you were having something like oatmeal, and you'd be like, okay, I eat oatmeal in the morning. That's great. But could we put some cinnamon in it? That's another plant. Cinnamon is bark from a tree. right? Maybe we want to put some berries in there. That's another plant. So we're already up to 3. And maybe we decide if we like nuts or seeds, we're going to throw in some nuts or seeds. That's 4 right there. And you haven't even got out of breakfast one day.
That's just breakfast. Wow.
Yeah. So we're talking, you know, fruits, vegetables, herbs, spices, nuts, all seeds, all of those things. So it's not really as hard as we think. We just have to be intentional about it.
Right. I think, because, I mean, when you just said 30, I was like, whoa, whoa. But then something that just hit me is like cinnamon. Like, we don't realize cinnamon's a plant, though. Like, you know, one of the things, I started putting cinnamon in my oatmeal because it's good for respiratory. It helps with your respiratory, and I've noticed that. So, but I didn't think, I don't think that we realize that spices and stuff are plants, too. Like.
And so going back to what I was talking about ancestrally, our ancestors knew spices, and they knew they were powerful, and they knew they were potent, and that's why they were putting them in stuff. It's not just to make it taste good. It does make it taste good as well, but it has other functions as well.
Wow. That's good. Wow. So just breakfast alone already had us at 4. We had to meet. We just one day just breakfast. Wow. That's good, because I don't think we talk enough about that. About the things that we should add in. And one of the things that you said, thing that I love is your best advice is not to subtract, but to add.
Right.
And
Add but not subtract.
I was like, wait, but we've been told to subtract so long.
Right. And how's it going?
Yeah. Right.
Not very well. And it ties back
you're
into
mad,
that.
you're angry. They be like, you know the commercial when somebody, I think it was like a Snicker commercial, right? And it was like, she's hangry. Like, because she was hungry and she's angry. And wow, that's, now that I'm looking at it, it's like, that was just showing how if you don't have what you want, it can affect your mind. Like, she was angry, or, you know, I know it's like, if you didn't eat something, or if you become more upset, a little bit more aggressive, a little bit more angry. Right. And like, I didn't realize that even though it's happening, like how that really does correlate to what you eat. Like,
right.
Wow. Your mood.
And just to give everybody a little bit more clarity, when I say I want you to focus on adding and not subtracting, that's my most basic nutrition advice when somebody asks me, like, what could I do to improve my health? And so what's really happening, if you like look behind it, is one, it's that psychology, it's that mind piece again. So I'm not taking anything away from you. Nobody ever likes to have anything taken away from you.
Right.
Right? But if I tell you, you know what? You know, I have a conversation and you tell me you need to eat more vegetables. Well, let's focus on having, you know, depending on how many times you're eating vegetables a week, maybe you're eating them 2 or 3 times a week, or maybe even less. And let's focus on having a serving of vegetables per week, right? You're like, oh, I can do that.
Yeah.
Right? You see that shift, and like, that's doable for me. That's not painful.
Right.
And so once you do that, and we go back to seeing those changes, those positive benefits, like, oh, you know what? When I had that, it was really easy. I just threw it in something I was already eating. I'm doing it 3 times a week. And I've noticed that I have better bowel movements. I'm not as constipated. Right. And then after you've done those adding of those simple things, when you realize how important it is, you're more likely to take away some of those things that maybe you shouldn't be doing. But you don't feel the same way anymore because you see the benefit. You got to get that buy-in first.
Yeah. I like that. I was just at my sister's house today. It don't have anything to do with food, but when you just said the buy-in, my niece is 13 months, and she had grabbed the thermometer, right? And I'm like, the thermometer temp is pointy. It's not sharp, but it's pointy. And I'm like, you can't have that. But I was like, normally, you take something from a 13-month, well, they ready to go off. So one of the things that my sister and I have been doing is, like, whenever we take something, we replace it with something, right? So the way that I did it, like, I was like, come on, give me the thermometer or whatever. And she has this, my sister got her these toothbrushes that she loves so that we can get her to start being okay with brushing her teeth. So it's cute and it's fun and she loves it. So I was singing to her, I was like, give me it, let me have this, you want this, switch it off. And it was so easy. The buy-in was so easy because I gave her something to replace it. So when you just said that, I thought it made me think, wow, if we replace it, like, we feel much better if we replace it with something that we enjoy or we like, but it's learned over time. Like this, me taking something away from you is not hurting you because I'm adding something good into you.
Right.
Wow. Let me ask you a question, because you have 3 kids and they're at the ages where they was kind of the fun ages, but I got these teenagers now. It was so raising my kids. it was much easier for me to get the things in them that they need. Like, they trusted me with making sure they have the right nutrition, right? We read labels. That's how I kind of did it educationally. Is like, we were reading stuff. That's how they knew how to measurements and things like that. So they was in the kitchen with me all the time. Now that they're a little older, though, it just seems like it's a little bit more difficult to keep them on the right path when it comes to food. Like, and I think part of that also is because, like, I stopped cooking like I used to because of me traveling to school and stuff like that. Like, I was the mom that always made their meals, like breakfast, lunch, and dinner, you know, packed their lunch and stuff. But once I pulled myself away from doing those things, I feel like they lost what it is. Sometimes, like, particularly my son, like, he just give me some chicken nuggets and some fish fillets and, you know, things like that. But I feel like, how do we keep our kids on the right path of, like, wholeness and wellness?
So there are 3 things that came to mind. Hopefully I'll remember all 3 of them. But the first thing is, I think that it's really important to have conversations about what food does for us.
Ooh.
Okay? And so I'm big on not using terminologies to give food classifications or hierarchy. So I don't like the words good, bad. I don't like to use the words healthy or unhealthy, right?
Okay.
Because if we're not choosing the right one, then we feel that shame and that guilt, right?
Wow. Yeah.
So instead, I like to describe food about what it does for your body. Okay. And so the example that I always give is, if we had a piece of candy and we had a piece of broccoli, right? We're not going to shame the candy, because if nothing else, candy has energy.
Right.
Okay. So, that piece of candy provides you with energy. This piece of broccoli, it's going to give you fiber. It's going to give you hydration. It's going to give you some vitamin A. It's going to give you some vitamin C. The list goes on and on about what the broccoli offers.
Right.
We want to be whole. We want to be strong, right? And so our kids aren't stupid. They're just like, oh, okay, yeah, I guess I should eat some broccoli or whatever vegetable it is, right?
Right.
We don't have to eat, and that's another thing that I think parents get, like, really hung up on. Like, you have to eat this specific food. As long as you get in all the nutrients, don't force your kids to eat anything, right? That the whole forcing, that's another conversation. But so, you know, we talk about these conversations like, oh, you like that? Okay, that's great. Have you thought about, you know, making sure you have your iron, your magnesium, your calcium? Like, what foods are you choosing to get those in? And they might be like, oh, like, you know, I used to think about when I was younger, and you see, like, the little old ladies with the hunchback. Like, okay, how you getting your calcium in? Have you been thinking about your calcium?
Wow.
And so having those conversations with them from being small and as they grow, this is going to be really important, because then you can be like, oh, you know, that's cool. Like, that's going to give you energy. But where is that? You know, you have a big game coming up. You need those vitamins and minerals to support you. You need that energy and these other things, these antioxidants that these types of foods are going to provide. So which ones of those are you going to choose? Right?
Oh, wow. I like that.
And then the other thing is, we, especially as adults, we have this picture in our head of what nutrition is supposed to look like. And if I've learned anything as an adult, most things don't go how we expect it, right? And so I'm a big fan of what I like to call grab and go type of items. And so it might be, you know, an apple, it might be some Greek yogurt, it might be a boiled egg, but having those grab and go items readily available that they can literally grab and go is going to be important. And so the other conversation that I would have is, you know, if it's mealtime, you want to strive to have 2 to 3 different food groups.
Right.
So you might put a boiled egg and a Greek yogurt if those are things that you like. You got some protein, you got some calcium from the Greek yogurt. You also got more calcium because it's Greek yogurt, or it could be traditional yogurt, right? Maybe you throw an apple in there. That's actually a pretty balanced meal. You can have a snack when you get hungry later, right?
Right.
So it doesn't have to be like you sit down and you eat all these different things. Or maybe it's going to be mixed into something. Maybe it's a soup or a stew. You know, you put them in a thermos. Like, it really just depends on the kid. It depends on your lifestyle. But the whole thing is, it doesn't have to look like what we think it's going to look like.
Wow. That's good. That's good right there. It doesn't have to look like, because as parents, we have this everything in our mind of how we want things supposed to be. Because, like, right now, definitely my one that's going to turn 18 next month. Wow, she's going to be 18. Ooh. Ooh. She is going into the Marines, right? Mm-hmm. And she's tall, she's thin. However, they have their certain criteria of what they want people to go in as, right? So she has been challenged to lose some weight, even though, so what she did was over the summertime, she had lost a massive amount of weight so that she actually got enlisted. She's enlisted now. But now that when she graduates to go to boot camp, she's supposed to be a certain weight, because what happened was she put herself on such a restrictive diet over the summertime where she lost a massive amount of weight, but then she started binging afterwards. Like, she's like, all right, I got to list this. She started eating a lot of different things. So now she has to lose the weight again, but she's very conscious of what she eats, right? But then because I feel like I put so many restrictions on her, like, she just feel like she got to break loose. And like, and when she breaks loose, she eats things like, and it's probably not a big deal that she eats some carbs, because like, Donna, carbs are energy and we need them. So why are you mad that she's eating carbs? Like, she can't just eat vegetables, right? But I'm like, because you need to be a particular way, and I think that's go into the lifestyle versus just doing it for a moment, right? So like, our biggest challenge is like, I get frustrated with her right now because I want this for her so bad that I'm restricting her. And so my sister has taken over her nutrition now, because I was like, I can't do it. It's too painful for me. It's too frustrating, because like, when I see her get a pack of crackers or eat 2 packs of crackers, I'm like, why are you eating that? Why would you eat that? You know that you shouldn't eat 2 packs of crackers. You're supposed to be doing A, B, and C. And I think it's so much pressure for her. It's stressing her out. And now, as we were talking, I'm thinking about her mental now, because she can't have like certain things. Like, I literally went to restrictive. Like, you can't have nothing but fruits and vegetables and protein. That's all you can have, and you got to be working out every day, because I want it so bad for her. But now that I'm thinking about her mental, because wow. I mean, to the point where it was challenging my mental, though. I'm like, listen, I can't talk to you about food no more. You talk to your aunt. Because call her. She said, can I get a pack? Call your aunt. Because I can't answer that, because I'm going to say no. But then my sister is teaching me, who's very conscious, and she does a lot of herbs and stuff. She makes juices and things like that. So she talks to her, and she's trying to tell me, but I don't want to hear it, because I'm like, I want this for her, and this is what I think she needs to do. So when you just as you keep talking, I keep thinking about the mental health of us, of our people, when it relates to food. Like, that's powerful.
Yeah. And so I have to say, I think you're doing the right thing. Sometimes we are not the best person to teach someone. I was just having a conversation with my kids earlier today, and I homeschool. And I was telling each one of them of like, if they're just, how kids ask you these crazy questions like, if you could do this, if you, and they're just like, if you got me a tutor in any subject, what would it be? And I was just like, well, I know you in ways that you don't understand about you yet. Like, I know what it's like to be an adult. So I would really want to choose something that is going to spark this love and curiosity, and something that I see that you might be interested in the future. You might not, right? Because I don't know everything. But, and then it got me to talking, and the one that I chose for my son was like outside of like textbook. But I was just like, if I had to choose something for you, it would be language arts, because you and we have a little bit of a tussle about that, right? And it's not good for either one of us. So if I could outsource that, that is what I would outsource. Because then it just puts a strain on our relationship. So I think that you're doing a great thing in outsourcing. Yeah. Is something that, it becomes problematic. And also, this is where, we hear about eating disorders, and we think of like bulimia and anorexia, but there's also this huge like category of things that we call disordered eating. And so they're not like a actual quote unquote eating disorder, but it is a disorder where you have difficulty with certain groups of food. Right. So you are disordered eating. And often people that have been on strict diets have problems with disordered eating. So we really don't want to set our kids up with that. And I have to say, most adults, at least in our generation, we probably have some touch of disordered eating. We talked about the clean plate club. We learned how to ignore our hunger cues because we were told we had to eat.
Right.
Right? I can't tell you how many times my middle daughter, she just doesn't eat. And I'm just like, I don't understand. Like, she'll just like skip a meal and I'll be like,
Right.
And then like, I was so concerned the other day that when we went to her well visit, I had the doctor like do all this blood work, right, to make me feel better. And everything was normal.
Right.
And I was like, how is this possible? But she's following her hunger cues.
Right.
And another thing that I want to say about food, which I feel like often blows people's mind, and my mind was really blown when I kind of like figured this out, is specifically in oppressed communities. You know, people often say like, I don't have willpower, or I have difficulty with this, like I'm so bad, I'm so terrible. One thing is, you're not so bad, you're not so terrible, you don't lack willpower. You don't have the support to make these recommendations that you're given a reality for your life.
Wow.
So that's one thing, right? So if somebody's just like, oh, you should cook at home more. Well, maybe you're working 2 jobs. Maybe you're driving to school every day.
Right. Yeah,
right?
Hello.
So if I had somebody cooking my meals, yes, I would gladly eat them, but I don't have that support.
Right.
So, so that's one thing. The other thing is, there's very few things, this goes back to the oppressed peoples, there's very few things that we can control in the world. Like when we walk out our doors, there's a lot that we can't control. Oftentimes, we use food as a form of control, a form of power.
Right. Yeah.
So when you really think about that, when you think about food as power, and this is the power that we have access to, I can choose to eat this, I can choose not to eat this.
Right.
That is when you really like start to peel back the layers, and you're just like, oh, okay, I don't have a problem, right? With the food, it's this power struggle that I feel powerless, so I'm choosing to eat.
Oh, wow. Whoa, 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 whoa.
Right? This is my way of exerting my power that I do have.
Right. You know what? You said that. That's interesting. You said that because the one that's going to be 18, she said that to me. She was like, I don't have control of anything. Like, right. Yeah. She was like, I don't have control of nothing. So if I want to eat this, I should be able to eat this. Like, she really, now that you said, but and not even just her, like just talking to other people, when we talk about food and things like that, like we don't feel we have power or anything else. So I think that makes sense. So as parents, though, you know, as parents, we want the best for our children, right? And I think you said something earlier that kind of a lot of us get caught up in of wanting things the way we want them and seeing things the way we see them, you know, not seeing it from our children's perspective. Like you said something about your daughter, she missed a couple meals, like, and you thought it was something wrong because in your mind, right, this is what you're supposed to do. And then in her mind, it's like, well, I ain't hungry, so what's the problem? But I think that goes back to something that traditionally is like we talked about cleaning your plate. What I put on your plate, you eat, and if you don't eat this, you don't eat nothing. I even find myself, the one that tests my inner gangster, like I'll be finding myself telling her, listen, this is what I cooked, and if you ain't eating it, you just won't eat. And I think back on it, it's like, that's not right.
So I think you know that I have children's books, right?
Yeah.
And so the one that I was mentioning that doesn't eat sometimes, she was the reason why I started writing children's books. So my very first children's book is called The Princess of Picky Eating Tries New Foods. So she is my inspiration. So this has been going on for a long time, right? Different iterations. She's definitely better now. But I got to the point where there's actually another dietitian, and the verbiage she uses is kind or considerate, not catering. Okay, right. So there is this, what we like to call in my field, a division of responsibility. That means as the parent, it's your job to decide what food choices that you're offering, when, like dinner's at 6,
right,
and where, like we sit at the table.
Yeah.
It is your child's responsibility to decide how much. It might be the full plate, it might be half a plate, it might be nothing.
Right.
Okay, so you take that, and you're just like, all right. So my daughter was often choosing nothing. Right. So I'm like, all right, this is, we're eating this. You don't want it? Fine. And she'd be like, okay. And she would go to bed 2-3 nights a week. just go to bed. And I'd be like, I can't believe this.
Right.
You know how you talked about at the beginning of the show, like, I'm not going to let her win?
Yeah.
Like, I would be like, oh, she's going to break at some point. Never broke. She just didn't want it. So then I got to the point where I would make sure that I made something at least once or twice a week that I know she enjoyed, so she could choose to have those as leftovers. So that was kind for both of us. It was considerate that I'm not cooking a separate meal because I don't believe in short order cooking either. Right. But I have something that you enjoy. Mm-hmm. Or making sure that there's a familiar food on the table, even if it's just fruit. Mm-hmm. So having those things readily available is what I would recommend.
Yeah. So, it goes back to that, parent. I say to my kids, mother knows best, but we really don't know best all the time. So you're saying that if she's not going to eat it, it's okay, but make sure that being considerate when you be planning the meals throughout the week, that it's something that you know that she will eat.
Right. So you don't want to make more work for yourself, right?
Right.
Like, this is not something that we're going to do. Like, you're not just going to get a special meal. You're no more important than anybody else in the family. That's important to understand. But we do care about you, and we do want you to eat as well. And so there's leftovers that I know you will enjoy. You're welcome to choose that. It's this or that.
You could get with this, or you could get with that.
But that's it.
I think that's good. I think that for so long, when we talked about control thing, though, I think as parents, we think that we're supposed to control our kids, control, everything about them, even their food choices and things like that. So what do you say to a parent who if their child just doesn't like certain vegetables or certain fruits, and like, do you think that a parent should keep introducing it to them and say, listen, this is what you gotta have. Like, I don't care if you don't like it.
No, but yes. So we want to keep reintroducing it.
Right.
One of the things as parents, the mistake that we make is we offer something once or twice. Mm-hmm. We know food costs money. Yeah. And we're just like, they're not going to be wasting my food. Mm-hmm. And so then we don't offer it again. But I want you to think of food like an experience that an adult might have, something that can be unsettling or frightening, right? The more you do it, the more you will be comfortable with it. Mm-hmm. So the more exposures your child has with that food, the more likely they are to try it, and the more likely they are to like it. So I would offer it in different variations. So like for me, I've always liked vegetables. I couldn't stand Brussels sprouts because the way that I had them prepared, they were boiled and they were bright green and they were disgusting. Mm-hmm. But one day when I was in my 20s, my best friend, who also didn't like Brussels sprouts but happened to be coming home from work and saw them at the farmer's market, she got them and she prepared them, she roasted them. A little bit of olive oil, a little bit of salt and pepper in the oven, and they were delicious. And now I love Brussels sprouts. That option was never presented to me.
Wow. Okay, so variation is important.
So yeah, because you might not like it one way. Some people like, cooked carrots. Some people like raw carrots. But if you're always giving it one way, you're just like, oh. Yeah. Right? And so it's important to keep introducing these foods, and even if it's not on their plate, for them to see it at the table, for them to know that it's not scary. And when we introduce them, instead of giving them this heaping pile of a serving that we think they should eat, the thing I love to talk about in this regard is like peas. Don't give them, if you know your kid is finicky, don't give them a serving of peas. Give them 1 or 2 peas, right? Let them roll it around. Ask them, what does it feel like? Is it smooth? Is it wrinkly? Like, what do you think it might taste like? Have a discussion about them. Get that buy-in from your child.
Okay, yeah.
Right? And you're not mad because you didn't just waste all these peas because you only gave them like 2. But you know that this was a non-threatening experience for them with this food. So then the next time they see this food, they might be more curious.
Right. So what I'm hearing from you, Stacey, is that we really have to be intentional about, I always talk about being intentional in the way we live, right? The way we talk, the way we act, and really being intentional about our life. But when it comes to food, we really have to be intentional about that as well. Because everything is here for a purpose, right? There's a reason behind everything, and you just explained so many different reasons of why we do what we do with food. Is that so? What would you say to the parent? Because a lot of parents that I talk to, a lot of the things that they say is that I don't have time for that. Like, how do you want me to? We get up in the morning. get your kids ready for school, you get yourself ready for work, and you go to work, you drop them off, you go to work, and then you come home, your dad be tired, and you're trying to figure out something for your kid. A lot of times it's microwave stuff or whatever, or unless, one of the things that I did early on was learning how to use a crock pot. Mm-hmm. So start doing crock pot meals and didn't realize that there were so many different things that you could do. But a lot of things that we hear now is that how can I really give my child nutrition food when I don't have time to, like, between don't have time to and the cost of food. Like, what would you say to a parent who say, oh, I just opened up a can of string beans and throw it in a pot? Because for so long we're talking about even canned food is just terrible for us, right? So you have parents who are really trying to figure this out, but then kind of giving up on it. It's like, listen, they're going to eat what they eat. You got to die from something. Or, like that whole mentality, because it's really between trying to really be intentional on planning that and you don't have time. And then even if you do have the time, do I get canned versus fresh? And how am I going to do it? Because fresh doesn't last as long as canned. What if I can't go to the grocery store every week? What if, like there's so many things that come into play of why people eat the way they eat.
I absolutely agree. And I mean, I feel like this is also a part of the society that we live in. And I will say, as a busy mom, I have these same struggles. Mm-hmm. So I don't think that there's one specific thing that you can do. But there are a few things that I would suggest. I would suggest that you have foods, like you're going to need to take some time whenever you have some time down. Right. And I would say make a meal like plan for at least 2 weeks. Right. Okay. And so I want you to consider days where you're dog tired mm-hmm. and days where you have a little bit of energy. Right. And have this as like your kind of like your background operating system. You don't have to use it all the time, right? Mm-hmm. But when you just don't have the ability to think anymore, this is already done for you. And use that as your guide. Mm-hmm. And once again, think about these grab-and-go meals. It doesn't have to look like what we think it looks like. Mm-hmm. So we're striving to have 2 to 3 different food groups when we have meals. Right. I have absolutely no problem with convenience foods. If that's what gets food on the table, that's what we have to do sometimes. Right. And I do want to say also that we need to recognize that sometimes we might be going through things. Maybe we have an aging parent. Maybe we have a sick kid. Right. And we just need to feed our kids. And those days happen, and it's okay. Like, it doesn't have to be perfect. Right. Right. It just has to be good enough. That's one of the sayings that's now like my mantra. It just has to be good enough.
Right. That's good.
Okay. So there's going to be days where you give your kids whatever you give them, and that's fine. But we're talking about generally speaking. Mm-hmm. I'm a big fan of frozen vegetables that you can throw in the microwave. Right. If you got to do canned, you can do canned. But the thing that I love about frozen vegetables is, once again, they store long term. You can buy a bunch when they're on sale. Mm-hmm. But they are usually what they call flash frozen. So as soon as they're harvested, they're frozen. That locks in some of the nutrients. Mm-hmm. So they can often be more nutrient dense than your fresh produce, because your fresh produce is often not grown locally. So, it's grown in Peru, it's harvested, it's transported, it's taken to your local grocery store, then you bring it home and you cook it when you cook it. As it sits, it's losing a little bit of its nutritional value each day. Right. So I'm a huge fan of frozen vegetables. That's right. Good. Yeah. You get a protein that works for your family. And the other thing that I didn't say is I would have my kids involved in this conversation. Mm-hmm. Like what type of proteins do you enjoy? Right? Yeah. Have a list. What type of vegetables do you enjoy? Are there any things that you would like to try? You can even get the circulars. Like, does any of this look interesting? Right. So they're more inclined to try these things when they have buy-in. So go through each of the different food groups and see what things interest them. Right. Create this master list and start just pulling stuff together. If you have it in your house, it's going to make it a lot easier when you come home in those days and you got nothing. I got a can of tomatoes. I got some rice. Yeah. I got some microwavable vegetables, and maybe I got some tuna. I mix them all together, and there I got a meal. Like, it might not be the most exciting, but you've covered all the bases and you didn't do much. And you could have already had those things at home. Right.
I have a friend of mine, a classmate of mine, and she has 5 kids. And, she busy, right? And one of the things that she told me was, like, growing up on Salisbury steak for me was just like a no. Like, I was like, I'm never giving my kids Salisbury steak, oohs and noodles, all this stuff that I grew up on, right? Because I'm like, but one of the things that she said to me, she was like, she had made a whole meal, and I'm like, what? She said, I made a meal with Salisbury steak. And I'm like, well, why are you giving your kids microwave? Like, what you mean? So what she did was, like, she cut up some onions, some green peppers, and some garlic and all that, and she microwaved the Salisbury steak for a little bit, but then put it on the stove, right? And then she cooked it on the stove, and she put all this stuff and made her, like, increase the gravy, and then she had some rice, and she put it on top of rice. Like, it literally looked like a gourmet meal. And I was like, how did you do that? Like, and she said her kids love Salisbury steak. And I'm like, what kids like Salisbury steak? But the way that she presented, the way, like, they smelled her cutting up the onions and doing all that. And it wasn't like it took a long time. It literally didn't take much time because she nuked it in the microwave a little bit. She just put it on the stove and she added all this stuff. And her kids love it. So I just was like, because sometimes I feel like when we think about frozen meals and things like that, it's so bad, but you could put your own spin on it. And I learned from her, like, I mean, my kids, the one that's about to be 18, I tried that because I was like, I'm never giving them, like, stuff like that. But I was so deadbeat tired, and I was like, well, it looked good on the plate that she sent me, so let me try it. The one that's about to be 18, she adored it. She loved it. The other ones, no. They just like, no, we ain't never had this, don't want this again. We ain't trying this. But it was something different that I tried. But yeah, just small stuff like that. I think that sometimes as parents, we beat ourselves up so much of trying to make sure that we're perfect. We're perfectly feeding our kids. We're perfectly, not even thinking about ourselves. Again, we talked earlier about, like, being a sacrifice. So we won't even think about what we're supposed to eat, but we're saying that we need to give our kids all this perfect plate. And even if they don't want it, we're forcing it on them.
And then we're mad because we put in this effort and you're not eating it.
And you disrespecting me now. Like, I'm so quick to use that word disrespectful, and I'm learning, I'm trying my best. But, like, I feel like if I put all this effort into something, the least you could do is respect me and eat it or something. And in our kids' minds, like, how is that disrespectful? You're disrespecting me because I don't want it, and you're forcing something on me, right? So then you got that conflict going on. That's the one that tests my inner gangster. Like, I be telling her, I'm like, I done cooked this meal because sometimes she doesn't want to eat it. And I'm like, why would you not eat this? That's disrespectful. But I think that sometimes we're putting stuff on our kids that we shouldn't. Like, they don't not even have the capacity for that. And because of what we think, again, as parents, like, sometimes we just need to chill out. Like, we just need to chill out. And I feel like what you said tonight just kind of helped me a whole lot. Even at this age, I've been parenting for 25 years now. I still need to chill out on some stuff.
Right. Yeah, and it'll help you too.
Yeah, how my mental state, because right now I'll be stressed because I'm like, what you mean you not eating this, or why are you eating that? For example, my biggest thing is, like, I don't buy a lot of junk food, so when I do, though, I buy it for the month, right? So, like, I'll buy peanut butter crackers, right? I'll buy a case of peanut butter crackers, and that's like 30 crackers in there. Now, I think sometimes also we don't realize that our teenagers are going to eat more than when they were little. Mm-hmm. And I think, especially boys, I think that in my mind, I'm still thinking that my 16-year-old, that he's about to be 16 next month too, that he's a little boy and he shouldn't be wanting to eat a lot, right? So sometimes I get mad at him. I'm like, why you take, like, how's this box of crackers going? Like, tell me where you got, like, a bottle in the stomach. And then I get mad and say, listen, now you disrespect me. I done spent all this money on food. I'm telling you, it gets bad in the house. Like, I'm keeping it real, y'all, because these are the struggles that I be dealing with. With the kids, it's just be like, I feel like if I'm telling you this is what we have for the month, and then you eat it all in a week, and I'm mad now, because I'm like, why would you do that? But that's something, like, he enjoys crackers. Like, he enjoys crackers, but he don't eat, like, a lot of other things. But I was just like, why? You disrespecting me now?
Because he doesn't have a job and he doesn't understand.
Yeah, I think that's what it is too. But I think also that, like, I'll be putting my expectations on what I believe that this is the way. And I think it's part of being controlled too. I said don't eat this. This is what you eat, and when you don't do it, now you're disrespecting me. I think a lot of us parents get to the point where, like, because we're providing, because, you know, we're making the money, we're bringing the food in the house, and we get the kids things that the kids like, and then when they eat too much of it, or you gotta go spend some more money, we mad now. Because food costs a lot of money. We're about to finish up, but a couple months ago, I had asked my mom, because I buy all fresh fruits and vegetables, right? And my kids was just getting on my nerves. Like, they weren't cleaning up like they were supposed to. I feel like I was being disrespected by the house not being clean. Yeah, you know I got disrespect that. and I said, like, I don't want to go buy no fresh fruits and vegetables because it costs too much money. I don't feel like they deserve me spending this kind of money. Like, and I had asked my mom, I said to my mom, did you give us canned goods because we was bad, or did you give us, or like I was trying to understand. I was like, did we not get fresh fruits and vegetables because it cost too much and you ain't feel like spending that kind of money on us because we were disobedient? Because that's what my mindset started being. It's like, listen, I don't want to spend all this money on this fresh food and you making me mad. Like, so she was like, no, that's all we had. That's all I could afford. I was like, okay, all right. But she was like, Donna, you got to give your kids good stuff. Like, you've been doing it all this time, so don't take it from them now because you mad at them. Like, that's crazy. Like, you trying to withhold good stuff from them. That's like, that's crazy. Like, but as a parent, you start trying to rationalize this in your mind, right? Like, you made me mad. Like, do I feel like spending all this money on it, even though it's good for you and it's healthy, right?
But you just have to remember, they're in a different space. I know that when I was younger, you know, I would get a lunch pack all the time. Somebody cared about me, right? Was spending their hard-earned money to give me lunch, and I didn't want the sandwich. I would throw it away every day.
Say,
Every day. Did they know? No, they didn't know.
Right.
But like, I think back of all that money that they wasted, and as an adult, I'm clear that I probably should have been like, you know what, I really don't want that.
Right.
I'm not going to eat it.
Right.
And it saved us, you know, saved them a whole bunch of money. And then I might have had something that I enjoyed more. But like, I didn't know what I was doing as a child.
And
I was just being a child.
And if you told me that, if you was one of my kids and you told me that, I'm like, you're going to eat it. Like, this is what you need to eat. See, that's what I'm saying. Like, so basically what you're saying is we have to give our children space enough to be able to say what they like and what they don't like, and don't force things that they don't like, especially if they try it over time, because it saves you frustration and saves them frustration, as if you're not hearing them though. Like, again, that forcing them to eat something that they don't want, and they tried it like in several different ways, but to be honest, like, I really don't want this. Like, my one kid was like, I don't like sandwiches. I'm like, you ate sandwiches last week, but this week I don't like sandwiches. I'm like, well, how can you change your mind? Well, I mean, I changed my mind too. Like,
yeah. So I think the most important takeaway that I would say is we do have to treat our children like people. And it's important to do that, because then, you know, you treat them like children. You got to have this, you got to have this. And then they go into the world and they don't know how to be.
right.
So if we want them to be able to make these nourishing choices for themselves as adults, then we've got to start, including them in the process, right? They're not going to get everything they want. Like, once again, we run the ship, right?
Right.
But when it comes to vegetables, instead of making stuff that we know they don't like and then being like, you could at least be like,
Right.
what vegetables? Like,
Right.
give me 2 or 3 vegetables that you might want to eat this week, right? And maybe you choose the one that's most cost effective to you, right? But at least you had thought about their preferences.
Yeah, I think.
And once again, it's not always going to be about what they want. Sometimes things are going to show up and we need to expose them to them, because we don't want them to be pigeonholed and only eat certain foods. But, you know, if you ask them, okay, I'm going shopping, what's 2 things from your wish list? I'm not saying you're getting them,
Right.
but what's 2 things from your wish list? And then they feel seen, right?
That's good.
So-
And that's good for the mind. All this is back into the mind, like, you know. All right, so we got to wrap this up, but there's so many things that we could still be talking about, because I feel like, you know, opened up a whole can, no point intended, a can of stuff. So what, as parents, you just had some takeaways here, but what would you share with parents who really, really are struggling with wanting to have the best, be the best for their kids? Like, I feel like we're so hard on ourselves. Like, you said a couple things earlier tonight, but what would you let them know?
So I would say give yourself grace, once again, because if you're struggling, they're struggling, it's not pretty, right? So give yourself grace. What I said before, it just has to be good enough. It does not have to be perfect. We want to think about our different food groups. We want to strive to have at least 2 or 3 different food groups each meal. And snacks, I love to see at least 2 food groups if we can make it. So, like, you know, instead of just the apple, it could be apple and peanut butter if your child doesn't have any peanut allergies. But things like that, trying to bring in that plant diversity that we talked about. And the biggest piece is to keep introducing those foods that your children might be fearful of, or that might be new to them, even if it's not on their plate. It needs to be around. And then the last thing, that most basic information that I gave you, is we want to add and not subtract. Think about those things that really matter, that are going to make the biggest impacts, that are doable, and add those things in. Does your kid need more hydration? Find out a way that, you know, they're going to consume that hydration. Do they need more protein? Figure out a way to get them more protein. Don't start just taking stuff away. Don't take away their fresh fruits and vegetables. Add in those things that you think are going to make their diets more robust and more nutrient dense.
Thank you. I'm learning. Even 25 years later, I'm still learning. Thank you so much for coming on the show, Stacey.
Thank you so
I felt
much
like
for having
you
me.
opened up so many different things. Just, you know, when we even thinking about our food and tradition and why, you know, certain things are added into our food, and that, you know, I think most importantly is like we have to do our own research on our food and not just go by what somebody says to us. Really figure out why, you know, why grandmama did this, or why granddaddy did this, and how beneficial it really can be to us. And that there's so much more than just like a couple fruits and vegetables. Like I mean, you said 30 plants, and we literally had 4 or 5 plants in just one bowl of oatmeal. So just open us up to more things, like to be more diverse in our eating. I think that was important. So thank you again for coming on the show. I really enjoyed it, and I think the audience really enjoyed it too, because you opened up my eyes, so I know that you opened up other eyes. So join me again, Parenting with a Purpose. I am your host, Donna Janelle, where you know that we have the conversations, uncomfortable conversations that we don't want to have. And remember, parents are the bows and our children are arrows, and they will land wherever we aim them, as long as we give them the right things, the right nutrition, right? The right for their mind, body, and soul. And remember, don't add, don't subtract, keep adding, right? I'm getting it. Don't, because I'm a subtractive person. I'm trying to tell you. I know you can't have this. So don't subtract. Just keep adding to live your best life. Thank you again for joining Parenting with a Purpose.